Sorry. So let's just shoot for that.
Okay. And then give me how much time do I have? Oh, there's no limit. Well, whenever you're tired of me. What I'm going to do is sort of follow, you've been given a handout on the sustainable tourism criteria. So if you looked at the first section, which is sustainable tourism management, or management system, so SMS, I thought I'd go there because that tends to be the more difficult concept to get a hold of rather than the environmental, which is the next section, the environmental section, which people tend to get, you know, okay, let's look at reduced recycling and how to do that stuff. They tend to get that. That doesn't seem to be the area that they lack in. So I'm going to go through some of these concepts that were following the GSTC and just talk about some personal experiences with some of these, and then any ideas or questions that you might have as we get into this. We can keep rolling. I think to start with, I gave you an overview of the GSTC, and so that's how we're operating. We're using that as our framework on what sustainability looks like. And I know Eric's involved with the protected area, and so are you, and some of you are, you know, working with protected areas to develop ecotourism. So I think understanding the idea that first and foremost, the protected area becomes a baseline for sustainability. We have to do things that protect those areas that we visit. And I thought we'd start with the question of what does sustainability currently look like in some of the projects or the work that you're doing. This is a conservation conference, and so they wanted to make sure that we touched on that and sort of generated some new ideas about conservation and how they can support it. You heard some examples of how we work with conservation. Rivers Fiji has a lease for conservation. There's a ton of models out there, but I thought we'd start with just, can you kind of think about your own operation and what sustainability looks like right now in the work that you're doing? I feel kind of silly at the microphone here.
When I think of sustainability, for the organization I primarily work with, the first thing I think of is financial sustainability, which is very bad. But at the moment it's really bad. But I suppose in terms of our concept for ecotourism within the national park, that means that everything will go, all the funds go back. Of course, right now all the funds go back to managing the recreational areas, but one day we'll make enough money that there's a spillover directly to conservation. But at least there are existing conservation programs, you know, reforesting with native trees, educational outreach to communities. And then I think that links with what we want to do around the national park with the communities in terms of helping them make their livelihoods more sustainable. Mostly it's farming communities, so we also, in addition to trying to introduce the idea of sustainable tourism to them, which is new because they're mainly farmers, we also try to assist them to make their farming more sustainable. So we do also training in sustainable agriculture.
Okay, great. And currently, are there any, is there any involvement by these local communities on the edge of the national park that actually work in the national park? Or
Yes.
they, okay.
We do certainly for the recreational areas that the park manages. Everyone who works there is from the local community, as well as people that, like the plumber, the electrician, are their local people.
Okay.
What we also have as part of the protected area management is a youth skills training program, and a lot of the young people who have passed through that program have actually become park rangers.
Okay. Yeah, so like a young apprentice park ranger program. That's excellent. That's excellent. we've heard very good stories from those types of things that are generated because you're getting sort of a consciousness back in.
Right, and even if they go on to what's also good about it is that it affects the community in that even if these young people don't become power rangers, they suddenly begin to think, wow, maybe I need to go back to school. And, or some of them have become police officers or, gone to nursing school. So they're doing something else with their lives instead of just,
Okay, thank you. How about some other ideas? Thinking about national parks or?
Well, I think, I guess sustainability gets wrapped up in, I guess, a number of things, or gets rolled out in a number of ways. We're just right now starting to look at making these parks ways that help to create and then sustain economic activities for local communities. So from the point of view of what we're doing now, there probably isn't a lot of what we've done in the past, but it's why I've come to this workshop, is because this is what we need to be thinking about doing. What is sustainability versus ecotourism versus nature tourism? That's one of the big things. I mean, within the Ministry of Tourism, you'll find them having these foolish discussions that, well, they're not really responsible for ecotourism, they're really responsible for sustainable tourism. And I'm like, okay, so what was the big difference that happened while I was asleep at the wheel? So I'm not sure I have a good definition for what it would look like in an organization.
But the idea is you're looking at including the local communities more within the context of the national parks.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I need to make sure that the parks are self-sustaining financially. Otherwise, we run into problems. And so we've just developed a business plan for one of our oldest national park that we have. We've just developed a sustainable a business plan, and within that business plan, there are a couple of items that look for sustainable financing mechanism, like in changing the way we do user fees now, making them a bit more sophisticated, and also looking for creative ways of getting local people involved, and then hopefully getting them to understand. Because when I told one operator, we want you to come do tours in the park, he said, oh, great. I said, but you have to pay us a fee. Well, not so great. What do you mean? I'm like, well, how do you think we're going to be able to say, oh, but gas is expensive, Eric, and but so working out that model is going to be very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a very common dilemma that you're facing, and there's some creative strategies that we'll hopefully talk about. So, do you have anything to add?
Okay, so this is the idea of what I do, the operation, how I do things. So if you look at the different three components of sustainability, the environmental, the social, cultural, and the economic, so I try to look at what is that I can do to maximize and do the best. So that the operation, what I do is as much as possible sustainable from the business point of view. So just to give you an example, from the point of view from the environmental standpoint, I try to sort of maximize, to reduce the ecological footprint of the destination by, let's say, choosing hotels that have good economic practices, environmental, social, and economic practices. For instance, hotels that have a good recycling, that they recycle, recycle, biodegradable from non-biodegradable waste, saving energy, and have the option to not to change your towels or sheets every day. So hotels that do provide that for people to choose, what to do done. From the social and economic, so I try that my product increases the social and economic footprint by working with local guides, making sure that tour operators, local tour operator, hiring local guides, supporting local projects that can be local schools also. So that way, by doing that, you're helping schools that also have a program with their children and students to have their own vegetable garden. In the school, they do that too. So that would be the social, the cultural, the economic, of course, working with local companies that do hire local people.
Yeah.
Whether it's hotels, accommodation, you want to make sure that they're local staff. Just to summarize in general that.
And it sounds like you're really thinking through the supply chain, so where they actually get their local foods, and you're supporting that behavior that is very locally based, which is
when I choose and look for the hotels, also one more, sometimes the restaurants asking them, where do you get your food? You get your food from Cusco, you get your food from Lima. Some, they have if it's a place that is not in the urban environment, they could have their own vegetable garden, so that comes from there, and then they have their own compost also, that's very important. So what is that they do with their plastic bowls of water? What kind of soap they use also in the bathrooms, whether it comes from, soap that is biodegradable, you can have so many aspects.
Oh, I know.
Just be talking for hours about all that, but
Well, that's good though, because I think you've all touched on different aspects of this sustainability concept in looking at the system. So everything from the communities that are adjacent to you and how do we bring those benefits back to local communities, to operational aspects, educational aspects, and then looking at the supply chain. This is a definition that UNWTO uses, and there's lots of definitions out there, but again, we're going to use this definition in combination with the GSDC criteria that you were looking over earlier, moving forward. We've already talked about these, and I think yes?
So is that definition, not the standard, but is that something that...
Yeah, so this is sort of for the tourism industry, UNWTO does sort of lead the way for tourism organizations, and there's a lot. So this would be a sort of a classic comprehensive sustainable tourism definition that's used widely. And I'm going to show you sort of the schematic of how all these things fit together, so we can look at this. But this is, Costa Rica probably has a definition that you use. I know Fiji has a definition, and they put an emphasis on sort of the cultural aspects of the communities. But this is a really, and just for everybody's knowledge, I am going to post these presentations up on our conservation website so that you can, if you need to download them and use them, you're welcome to. So and we already talked about the pillars being environmental, cultural, socioeconomic, and of course the management of all of this. And this is probably one of the most important things in talking to your government people and those people that are sort of on the periphery of understanding sustainable tourism. But something that brings it all together is really emphasizing that these don't act separately. That in the concept of sustainability really integrates these ideas comprehensively. And the whole basis for supporting these ideas is planning and management of these ideas. So how do we actually systemize the social, cultural, economic, and environmental aspects into a plan or into a system that we can operate from? And I think that is part of, no matter what level, at Rivers Fiji, we're a tiny little tour operator in the middle of the South Pacific. We have what, I don't know if we call it our sustainability policy, but we have a management plan on how we operate to minimize minimize negative impacts, but also address and incorporate these. So it doesn't matter what size you are, but together you should have a system by which you operate, and so everybody's on the same page. And in just thinking of some of the questions that come up, why is sustainability important? Why do we even care about this? Is it just this buzzword, or do we really need to integrate this into our society today? And then I also want you to think through some of the ideas on how you can become more sustainable, and hopefully as a group, a very knowledgeable group, will generate some of those ideas. And then what are the benefits of a sustainable operation? And what can you sell to either your community or your operators that may come to your park or your conservation area? What can you sell them that really they can gather an understanding or benefit of going to the trouble to really evaluate this? And so why this policy or this management issue is important to business? We have shown, and research has shown, that sustainability does add to survival. It adds to survival from an environmental aspect, from an economic aspect, and from a community support aspect. And now we're seeing the markets really join this movement and be a part of it, and the demand increasing. So in many sectors, if you look at insurance companies, for example, insurance companies are more likely to have better rates for those companies that act in a sustainable manner. Why? Because if you're not acting sustainably, if you're risking some aspect of environment, that may come back to haunt you, and actually you may be at risk of lawsuit or some other aspect. So insurance companies, from the business sector to the environmental sector, are supporting this idea. Another aspect is sort of the people aspect. How are we actually integrating people into, you can have all the protected areas in the world, but unless the people that live in and amongst and around these protected areas are integrated into the system in a positive way, I don't think they'll see the benefits, and they may not be supporting your conservation efforts. And also we do see better environmental and social cultural results. We see more action for cultural heritage support and preservation and enhancement oftentimes, and certainly from an economic perspective, there's some definite benefits that come out of this as far as what's going on. So direct cost savings and improved profitability. I think certainly Glenn's going to address that, and Masaru probably to some degree in his talk. But certainly we are seeing this on the ground. There's no doubt that simply by changing light bulbs you can reduce energy costs. There's no doubt that if you have a different type of faucet operation that you can conserve water. Some of these issues are more critical in different operations than others. There's no doubt that if you save gas, you save money with fuel costs going, and you also save pollution. There's also financial incentives available. There are loans and small business operation startup loans that are looking at the idea of sustainability being worked into the operation itself. And there's community involvement. And when you get communities behind you, we have more of an integrated, systematic approach to really on-the-ground development and destination development as a whole. Some of the other benefits have been increased publicity. Certainly with Rivers Fiji, our sustainability actions have created stories about the company. And those stories get posted in the newspapers. We have travel writers come in, we have videographers come in, we have interest because of those stories about sustainability. So I think that's free, we don't pay for it, they're interested in those stories. Certainly it's provided increased networking opportunities with our local NGOs. They want to help. We're helping their mission by protecting a river corridor. We're actually helping their mission. We're helping the Ministry for Environment with their mission to increase Ramsar and wetland protection in countries. So that's all good. Improve morale, and there's probably several documented cases, but people like working innovative people, young people, enthusiastic people, like working for companies that are doing good. And this has been proven time and time again, and we're seeing if you're doing good, if you're doing these initiatives that are cutting edge and that are on the, the edge of what we hope sustainability can achieve, we are seeing those companies attract even the brightest and the more enthusiastic staffs, and it kind of self-perpetuates a really neat team approach to whatever operation you might be working on. And then education. With sustainability comes increased education on how to do things better and how to live a little bit lighter on the land. In Salt Lake City, Utah, where I'm from, where I work, we have a program called the E2. And the E2 is somewhat limited. We're in the United States, we don't deal with social, cultural within our certification and different environmental programs, but E2 deals with economic and environment. And what they've looked at they do all businesses, this comes out of the mayor's office, but they've looked at direct cost savings and improved profitability.